Hi, friend. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are doing well and charging through the week. If you are here with us live, hi. Say hi to Giacomo and James and Aaron and Brendan and Jim and everybody else who is already here. I know sometimes it can be intimidating to say hi, but you don't have to worry because everybody else has already gone first, including me. So please do lean forward, type those fingers, and let us know who you are, where you're coming in from, maybe what caffeine of choice you have chosen for today. We'd love to hear from you. However, if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast network while you walk the dog or fold the laundry or do the dishes, never fear, because you too are part of this conversation. Because if you have questions or thoughts, one, you could always add them in later, or two, you could always message me and we could get those questions asked. So I always like to say it's a choose your own adventure here. It's if you want to jump in and join the conversation, we'd love to have you. We're friendly folk. We'd love to see you. However, if you just want to lean back and fold that laundry and listen to this later on your favorite podcast network, that is okay too. It's a best of all worlds, if you will. And so I feel like if you feel like also that this conversation would resonate with a friend, sharing is caring. There's always more seats at this coffee table. So bring that friend on in with us so that they can join in the conversation too. I'm excited to see so many great faces. Rhonda coming in from San Antonio, and Richard from Nova Scotia, and Tina from Toronto. And we got India, Isthikyu, Marco coming in. I just feel like we have such a good crew here today. So you are in very, very good company, my friend. And we're even going to have more, better, more amazing, more smart company in our coffee chat with Martin today. And I just wanted to kind of give you a little insight. We talked to Martin way back in 2023, and he is someone that I follow on LinkedIn. I'm sort of always looking at what he's doing and talking about, because Martin is a digital marketing professor, which I geek out over stuff like that. So that's really cool. But he's also the associate director of the Future of Marketing Institute. And so they literally have my dream job, which is just you get to nerd out on like marketing and the future of marketing and how social media and AI and kind of all these different factors like are affecting brands and affecting consumers and affecting you and I and our work and our business. And, we just kind of get to be in the weeds of that all day long. And so I'm always really excited to talk to Martin, because I feel like he does a good job of taking sort of the stuff that's in the weeds and making it really applicable to us and making it really instantly actionable. So it's not this like big esoteric talk. And you know what? That's fine for some podcasts. Like, I get done listening to Andrew Huberman sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I just learned a lot about red light for 3.5 hours, but how am I applying that to my life? So, there's a time and place for these like kind of big esoteric conversations. But I really like Martin because I feel like I always leave with 1 or 2 or 3 actionable things that I can do today, like to put it into practice. And I feel like that's a skill that he has that not a lot of other people in this space have. And so I'm always really excited to talk to him about AI. I feel like we could probably talk to him every single month, because as you know, AI is constantly changing. 1 minute it's ChatGPT, then everybody's on Perplexity, now everybody's on Claude, now everybody's on Grok. It's like, woo, whiplash from all the different things that you can be on. So I'm really excited. I hope you're really excited. I have a litany of questions. But I hope you also came with some questions. And if you do, please don't be shy. Please bust them into the chat so that you can also get your questions answered by Martin, because we're lucky little beans today that Martin is joining us, because I'm sure he's got a lot of people that are all vying for his time. So without further ado, will you raise your caffeine or beverage of choice? We will leave that indiscreetly to whatever you plan on having, and help me welcome Martin to our coffee chat.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much. And first of all, I had no idea I could bring my laundry, because I would have done some folding while we were talking, just, to kind of relax me. It's, way
exactly. Some people need fidget spinners. Other people just need whites and colors to fold them up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a choose your own adventure. Well, like I said, Martin, I'm so excited to talk to you because I really do think that you have like my dream job. You literally just get to nerd out about marketing all day long, which sounds so fun.
It is a lot of fun. And you know what? We'll have to talk to you about the Future of Marketing Institute. So this career that I'm in now, Kim, it's kind of like a later career for me because most of my time was spent in the agency world, owning my own communications and event planning agency. And around 2015 or 16, I started really getting interested in teaching. I happened to fall into the Schulich School of Business in Toronto. And there's a few people from Schulich here. So nice to see you here. The other Kim that you mentioned, and also Marco, and I think a few others. And I'm fortunate enough that I can't say my job is being a futurist, but I get to be a quasi-futurist and look ahead at things. And it really is fun because ultimately you're never wrong. You're never right, but you're also never wrong. And you keep learning new things. So that's kind of fun.
Well, and I feel like not only are you constantly learning new things, but I feel like what you focus on really like applying AI, marketing creativity, like being human first, that like the nature of the bit, like AI is always changing, the platforms are always changing. So like you really have to, I imagine that a good chunk of your day is also constantly learning because things are always changing. It's not like, oh, we changed a tire on the car and the way we changed a tire on a car in 1995 is pretty much the same way we change a tire on a car now. Your world, it's not, it's been the same for 10 years. It's sometimes not even the same for 10 days.
No, or 10 minutes. In
10 minutes.
In some cases. No, it's true because I feel like I probably read about AI and sort of anything digital for about an hour and a half every day, every single day. And so my head is always on the verge of exploding because I don't have a technical background in computer science, in statistics, in math. It was really tough, challenging and tough for me to kind of learn about AI. And that's why I feel like I can at least translate some of the things it does, knowing that we don't need to know how to completely repair our cars, going to that metaphor that you shared earlier. But, we try to put it into human terms. And in fact, one of the students, who's on here, Magofe, who said, nice to see you too, Magofe. She just was in a class that I teach called the Future of Marketing course. So it's a way that we get specialists or interns for the Future of Marketing Institute. And this course, oh my gosh, it changes not only year by year. I've only done it twice, but week by week. And so I'll be taking the subway to a class, read something on my phone and go, oh crap, I've got to update the slides. So it happens in real time. And that makes all of us feel a little bit like we have FOBO, not FOMO, although there's a bit of that too, but FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete because we don't know what we don't know.
Well, and I feel like it's because you don't have a technical background, like you said, to add on to James's point, I think that it makes it much more relatable for people like James and people like me to learn about AI from you because you're approaching it the same way. You're not kind of approaching it from like a holier than thou place. And so I'm curious, as someone who teaches other people, talks about this subject a lot, kind of both in the LinkedIn sphere, but also in the Future of Marketing Institute. What do you think is one of the things that kind of the average person in their career, the average person in business is really struggling with when it comes to either incorporating AI or even just using it for the first time?
Oh, that's a great question. Can I give you two answers instead of one? Okay. So the first thing is, I think we forget we're all neophytes. We're all new at this because ChatGPT is only 3 years old. Now, prior to ChatGPT, so in like October 2022, there were all sorts of AI tools, but they were a lot more technical. What ChatGPT did is it made us all realize, one, how good the tools are, also how bad they are too, because it's kind of that duality, but how easy they can be to use. And that's deceiving, because we think, okay, we all know how to chat. We should be able to talk to AI systems and get good outputs, but it's more complicated than that. And I think that brings us to number 2, which is, I think, learning how to prompt effectively or talk to machines in a language that they understand. We know how to talk to people. So when we're chatting here, you'll say something, there'll be certain things that you're implying or assuming that I will know certain shortcuts. I'll say something, same thing applies. We know how to talk to people, but machines don't process subtext. They only process text. And so we have to figure out how to communicate with these systems that kind of use words like us, but also kind of don't. And that's where the whole idea of prompt engineering or prompting comes in. And it's a skill that we can all learn because we're all conversational, but we have to pay attention to a few things.
Well, and I love this question from Aaron, really asking about, from what you've seen, what ways does AI substitute for like these human workers in marketing companies? Are you seeing that there still needs to be a discernment of, to your earlier point, like the AI machines don't always understand the subtext, whereas humans do?
Yeah, I think we are definitely still needed. I wake up every morning, I'm either really excited about the future or I'm scared out of my mind. And I kind of go between this pendulum, right? Yeah. And back and forth, back and forth. And I think right now, if we know how to use the tools in a way that not only makes us productive, but makes us better and more creative, helps us connect with audiences in a different way, I think that's where there is a lot of potential for all of us. But honestly, the marketplace is changing, the world is changing, and we don't really know what that's going to look like when we're in the middle of it. And that's scary, really. That it's FOBO again, that fear of becoming obsolete. So I think the best advice I can give people is, one, become subject matter experts in something, learn about something. And the second thing is learn about how to use the AI tools to make you better at that something, and not to say, oh, I've got to write a blog post, here AI, you do it. Because if you like writing, why are you giving that to a machine? Why not give your laundry folding to a machine? Although I'm not ready to give that up.
Although that's coming.
Yeah, it is
coming. That is coming.
That I don't mind, actually. The friendly home robot that I trust will not turn into the Terminator.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
We can really only hope. I hear you in terms of really, the way I think about it too is I really think about whatever platform, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, all of them. I really think about it as a really smart, helpful intern. Like, I am still Batman, but like that is my Robin. It's my sidekick. Yeah. But it's never going to be the main star of the show, because I think it can be a good thought partner. And I think that's something that you've really talked about as well, that Giacomo is also asking about, which is using AI more to help spark your own creativity, kind of using it as like you are the spark, but maybe that is the gasoline a little bit, and really utilizing it to help with the creativity, help with marketing projects, help spark the next big idea, which the next big idea really is yours. The next big idea is not ChatGPT's. And so how do you teach people, or how do you help people think about how to use that to spark creativity?
I think part of it is we have to get beyond that productivity mindset, that this just gets us to do things faster. Because, if we do things faster and produce more content, human beings, our capacity to read, watch, understand, think more has not increased. So more content isn't going to make the world better for us. In fact, it's probably going to make it a little bit worse, especially if a lot of that content is AI slop. So just mediocre, run-of-the-mill stuff, which is not that different from human slop. I mean, humans have been producing boring content for how many years? A lot of the stuff, as marketers or communications people, a lot of the stuff we do just has to be good enough. So how can we get beyond good enough in everything we do and use AI to that? So what I'll do is I always suggest that people start with their own ideas, and then the AI is helping you build it or create it, but it's not creating the idea first. You start with the AI. I mean, what are you contributing really? I guess you can contribute a lot, but.
Well, and I feel like you really, to Aaron's point, I think that when we think about FOMO and AI, I think as long as you think about it where it's coming from you first, and it's not this like fear of the technology or fear that it's going to be taking something away from you, but really flipping that on its head and saying, okay, it's actually going to help me.
Yeah.
It's going to make me a bigger star. It's going to make me a bigger, like it can actually help expand your ideas as opposed to, taking back the fun part, if you will.
Yeah, but you have to play around with it for that and test it out and really try out different chatbots or different LLMs, because they all have a slightly different perspective. Before I finish answering, I just want to shout out to Michael Bolton, who I've known since like way last century. He was a really smart guy and who recommended StephenWolfram.com's writing. I think it's really worth checking out. So thank you, Michael, and great to see you virtually. Okay, so Michael says the next big idea is only yours. Yes, they're not idea generators. Yeah, I completely agree with that, although a lot of us use them as idea generators. And I think that's maybe not the best way to do it.
Totally. For somebody who maybe is joining us today, Martin, that is, thinking of themselves, okay, Martin's telling me to experiment, he's telling me to try different things. What's like one or two things that someone could, like, how do they start trying new things? Is it just downloading ChatGPT? Is it, just kind of playing with the interface? How do you kind of get people over the first hump of really starting to try it?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely playing with the various interfaces. I think you have to make a differentiation, though. Don't necessarily play with them at work, because work will likely have IT approved tools that you should be using. And if you're not using them, you're contributing to what's called shadow AI, and you're potentially putting the data privacy of your organization, company at risk. So try them at home on your own devices, and definitely spend time playing around with them, having conversations with them, asking them questions. One thing I did this summer is I went to a number of the chatbots and I asked them to describe the other chatbot personalities as if they were people. And then I compared and contrasted them. And it's so funny because, a number of the different systems called ChatGPT a pleaser, and it really is a pleaser. Claude was called an overthinker. In fact, Claude itself from Anthropic called itself an overthinker. And it really is. I read that AI is getting better at writing jokes. So I thought, I'm going to just see what happens here. So I typed into Claude, I'd like you to write a joke. Here's the beginning. 3 robots walk into a bar, ... And just see what it do on that joke. And the first iteration was so bad that I didn't say anything. Claude itself said, "That's really bad. I'm so sorry." Like, it had a kind of awareness of how bad it was. It started to improve. So try it out for those things that surprise you. Take a piece, take a question where you got the answer from ChatGPT, pop it into Gemini, and then pop it into Grok and find out what they're doing. I would love it if I had the skills to create, which I don't, to create kind of an interface where I could invite Grok and Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT all together with me and have like a weird conversation with them. I think that'd be really interesting and bizarre and probably frightening, but still pretty interesting just to see what might happen. And those are the kinds of things that I think you want to do.
Well, and I think, playing around with it is definitely the first step. And I think really just allowing yourself to be silly, be bad, be curious, put some
Yeah.
things in there. I always tell people, like, listen, we're not curing cancer. We're not revolutionizing the world. You have to come at it with a place of curiosity and a place of like, I don't know, let me just ask this random question, or, really kind of, you got to get your feet wet to even start. I feel like we have so many questions. It's hard to get to all of them, but really kind of digging into this topic of copywriting and, what is stealing content, and, how to kind of wrap as you're trying things, how do you guide people in this way?
Well, first of all, the whole idea of stealing is wrong. And when someone creates something and it's their intellectual property, they should get credit for it. Attribute it, link to them. If you're building on someone's idea, give credit to the source, because hey, without them, you might not be thinking about this. When it comes to machines, I mean, there's so many intellectual property or copyright considerations. A lot of artists are suing some of the major tech companies, and we'll see how that plays out. But going back to the olden days of copywriting, I was a copywriter when I started my career. And one of the things, when you needed ideas, you went to the books that had copies of some of the best ads, and you'd flip through them for inspiration. And you might get inspiration, go, oh, I can take this great piece of copy that someone did for Dove soap and apply it to tires, going back to tire ads, which I was writing at the time. And is that stealing? No, you're kind of adapting, you're building on it. And I think it's the same with LLMs, but we do have to be careful, because if we're putting out a piece of content that we're saying is our own, and 90% of it is written by a machine, you have to ask yourself whether or not you deserve credit for that.
Yeah, exactly. And really, are you using it as, like, I always tell people, again, this is just like my little golden rule, that it should be a helper, not a doer. So it should be helping you. It shouldn't be, it's kind of like teach a man to fish type of thing. Like, it can help you, but it shouldn't be doing all the work for you.
No.
For me.
Me as well. And you know what? I have a big enough ego to believe that I am a better writer than a system that has been trained on way more books than I'd ever read, way more research studies, has read way more articles, has participated in way more conversations, but I don't want to give that up. And I still, when I write my newsletter, I write it by hand, I edit it by hand. My wife helps edit it at the end. And every once in a while, I'll put it into ChatGPT or Claude and say, "Can you improve it?" And
Yeah.
I'm never happy with what it does now, and that makes me personally satisfied. There's a really interesting conversation going on in the chat about asking ChatGPT how you should live without it. I don't know if you see.
It's so true. It's a good point. It's like how you should be living with it, how you should be using it. I do, speaking of, really believing in your own writing and kind of loving what you wrote more than what ChatGPT has written for you. I think this point that Giacomo brings up is really interesting, especially when it comes to AI, which is, you really know yourself well, and you know your own writing style really well, and you know what's going to resonate maybe in your town or your state or your country. But for somebody who wants to leverage AI to use it internationally, or to use it across languages, or to use it across various things, or, in this question, Giacomo is asking, on the other side of the world, that you want to communicate or network, or how have you seen AI, or what are your best tips on using it to interface with somebody who maybe isn't like you, or isn't in your country, or isn't in your same industry?
I think translation is a fantastic tool that I don't know if we use it that much. My wife and I, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had coffee somewhere. We came out and there were two tourists there from Spain who needed to find out where to go to buy a kettle. Okay, but they couldn't speak English, and I don't speak Spanish. My wife doesn't speak Spanish, so we couldn't really communicate. They were trying to show us, this thing that looks like that. Couldn't know as a kettle necessarily. And I opened up, Google Translate, so really old, put in Spanish to English, and all of a sudden we could communicate. So I think that's a really good way of doing it. For networking, AI also, you can ask it specific questions about different cultures, different customs. No, you've got to double check it, because you can't always believe what it says, although the systems are getting better at not hallucinating so much. But I think those are a couple of ways. One thing that I don't think people should do, and we see a lot of this on LinkedIn, is don't use AI to write your personal post. Maybe get it to polish it, but do not use it to write it, because you can tell, and it just doesn't sound real. And and even worse than that, do not use AI to comment on posts, because as someone who responds to comments or participates or comments on things, I don't know how to reply to that. Thanks. I don't want to say, oh, did you use AI to write this? Because if you did, don't bother, because that's too mean. And, kind of passive aggressive.
And I also think you can help it to, one of the things that, for instance, that I'll use myself as an example, that I use AI for, when it comes to networking across time zones, across different cultures, is like, we have a lot of vendors that we use that are based in China, and Chinese New Year is coming up as an example. And so one of the things that I'm talking to ChatGPT about is like, okay, well, when are people normally out of factories? How does the queuing work for when people are back in? When when is the appropriate time to contact that? All these sort of things that, I didn't grow up necessarily with Chinese New Year. So I wouldn't know any of those things living in America. So I also think, to Giacomo's point, you can really use AI to say, this is the person that I'm communicating with. This is where they're based. This is their address, when knowing that this is coming up for them, or what are the cultural, like, another thing that I'm thinking of kind of earlier in my career, when I moved to New York, I had, people that I was working with that were American based, and people that were based in Europe at the time. And I can remember I was working in magazines at the time, and we had a monthly close. And I can remember people in the office kind of rumbling, being like, ugh, summer is the hardest. And I'm thinking, well, why would summer be different than anything else? And that's when I learned, well, culturally, like, all of Europe, July and August, like, everybody's on holiday. Nobody's answering. It's hard to get the fashion brands to answer. It's hard. And so even just learning that, for me, like, oh, okay, so, in different places, there's different expectations or different cultural norms. So I think, really, Giacomo, I think you could use AI to really kind of figure out, okay, if I'm going to network with somebody from Nashville, how does that differ from networking with somebody in London, versus how does that differ from networking with somebody in Cape Town? What are all those people experiencing, and what are their lives like?
Yeah, I think that is a great answer. That's great. You use it for research, and honestly, the deep research tools that all of the systems have are pretty good, if you know how to ask the questions. And if you ask them in a kind of systematic and structured way, you can find out a ton of stuff, and then check the links that they provide, just to be sure that they're legit.
Well, exactly. And I feel like really checking the work of I tell people all the time, like, AI is an intern. Like, you must check the work that it is giving back to you, just like you would check an intern's work. And I kind of love this, a juicy question from Elizabeth that's also like a little controversial. But when you look at these AI platforms with the misinformation, they tell you somebody wrote a book, but they didn't actually write the book, or they tell you somebody's written 3 books, turns out they've only written 2 books. What are your feelings on using it, from an ethical standpoint or from a professional standpoint?
I think we've got a fact check. And this question from Elizabeth is a really good one about misinformation, disinformation, hate speech on Grok and X, kind of, which, that's one thing I really miss. I loved Twitter. I did. I really loved Twitter. I even earned one of the check marks. I don't know how that happened, but for some reason I got one. And
You did it.
yeah, but now I don't want to pay for one. I don't feel that's legitimate. And I think, media literacy comes into play here. We have to double check and verify sources. I keep talking about fact checking the same way you'd fact check a friend, really, because AI hallucinates, but guess what? So do humans. We make up stuff all the time, and AI was trained on us. So I think it's really important to verify. And if you find any platform toxic, probably it's not a bad idea to stay away from it. If it's hurting you psychologically, and not to get pulled in to the rage clicking, rage bait. If I can do a little commercial for the Future of Marketing Institute, today's post on LinkedIn was all about how algorithms are really seem to be going all in on rage clicking. And so we have to step back, breathe, and just say, okay, wait a minute, what is this really about? And then fact check and double and verify the sources. And that takes time. And a lot of times we just want a fast answer.
Well, and I feel like I sort of have a pendulum swing answer. I feel like for a lot of the last couple of years, people are like, become a master in prompts, like become a master in AI, become a master. And I actually think, to touch on the point you just said, I actually think the people that are going to succeed most in the future are ones that become masters of discernment.
Yeah.
They become masters of checking is what I'm seeing really real. I have a friend who studies AI and videos. Her name is Taryn Southern. I recommend that everybody look at her Instagram and whatnot. And one thing that Taryn always talks about is that, you can get deceived in videos now. There's a viral video with a little happy hippo, and he's swimming up to a polar bear, and people see it and they say, oh, how cute, without really thinking, well, wait a minute, hippos and polar bears don't live in the same place. Hippos don't live where polar bears live. And so I think really kind of saying to myself, wait a minute, is what I'm seeing, having that discernment to not just say, oh, cute video, the hippo and the polar bear friends, to your point, stepping back and saying, okay, wait a minute, this looks realistic. Don't get me wrong, it's very cute. They look like they're little besties. But is this real? Could a hippo and a polar bear even be in the same place? I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the challenge with all of this is that, hold on, sorry, I thought I put my phone off, but it is ringing. Oh, well, I'll just ignore it. The challenge with all of this is not knowing kind of, as you said, what's real, but also not knowing what's new or what's believable. So one of the things, if you ask a chatbot anything, or ask it to create a video, but say you ask it to create a piece of content, if you're not an expert in that subject, you won't know if it's good or not. And I think that's where subject matter expertise plus discernment are two fantastic things to cultivate, in addition to knowing how to use the tools. Because whether you like it or not, you still have to know how to use a keyboard and type if you're going to communicate digitally. That doesn't mean you have to consider yourself as an expert typist, but you have to know enough to turn on the car, put it in Drive, and be able to move ahead. I really do like the car metaphors. I don't know if you know this. I've written a long, long time ago, wrote 2 books of fiction. The second one was called Everything in Winnipeg, which is where I'm from, begins in a car. So I like car metaphors.
Well, I hit the nail on the head then by using one earlier
Tires,
today.
yes.
I love this question from Andy because it just kind of is a cheeky one, which I always enjoy, which is, how did you use AI, or did you use AI to prep for your discussion today with us?
Oh, thank you for making it, for thinking that I'm prepared. First of all, no, I didn't. I actually read over my notes about things, when we went back and forth, email, what we're going to talk about. But no, I did not use AI to prep for the discussion. I did read the news today about what's kind of new, so I would be able to at least speak about it if it came up, but no.
And I feel like, going back to everybody in the chat is talking about made up things and discernment tags. I feel like, again, even when you are prepping for a meeting, if you are using any of these platforms, just be sure to double check that what the AI is telling you is indeed correct. Because if you're going into the meeting with the wrong information, not a good place to be.
No, absolutely not. And you know what? You're going to have to copyright discernment tag and write some content about it. I may write about it too, but I will give you credit, Kim, for that, because it's a really good way to describe what we need to do. And you know what? The discernment tag still applies to humans too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I feel like, again, because there are even people that I really trust and really respect and really admire, and they'll say something, whatever it is, and I'll say, that sounds really interesting. Where did you get that information? And, sometimes they'll say, I heard it on a podcast, or, I read it in the news. But, a few times they'll say something like, well, I saw it on Facebook. And that's when my spidey sense immediately goes up, where I'm like, wait a second here. Are we getting into polar bear hippo territory?
Yeah.
You saw it on Facebook. So I think you always have to, to your point, even with humans, be like, okay, well, even though I know this human and I like this human and I trust this human, where is that human going to get this information?
For me, the word somewhere is a big one. I read it somewhere. I heard it somewhere. It's like, okay, maybe suggest, a couple of possibilities for where that might help.
No, and I feel like it kind of leads me into this next question pretty beautifully, which is, obviously you talked about earlier about spending an hour or an hour and a half each day learning. I'm curious, where do you go to learn? Is it, podcasts that you're listening to? Is it certain newsletters that you're subscribing to? Where are you consuming your education from that you feel like is really, you like it and it's beneficial and it's either fun to listen to or fun to read?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it's a whole bunch of different platforms that are a combination of the above, starting with one that I would highly recommend, and that is Axios AI newsletter. It's free subscription, comes out every single day. It takes 2 or 3 news stories and writes them in the smart brevity style. So, with a headline that grabs your attention, really engaging lead or opening, and then some facts and links where you can go deeper. So you can just read it quickly and get an idea of what's going on. So I always read that. And I always read the Neuron newsletter, which is similar to the Axios AI Plus, but it goes in even deeper on AI. I read TechCrunch, I read VentureBeat, the New York Times is really good. All sorts of newsletters on LinkedIn and Substack, including Ethan Mollick's newsletter, One Useful Thing, really good. Christopher S. Penn's newsletter, Almost Timely News, really informative on how to use AI and technology in general. So all of those, I listen to so many podcasts, although lately, as an antidote to that, I've been going between Smartless and Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, because when I'm listening to a podcast, I just want entertainment. I want to laugh. I want diversion. I want to hear different ideas that aren't necessarily technology based. So that's what I'm doing. But I do listen to like Lex Friedman's podcast. That's another one. Future of Life Institute, which is not-for-profit started by Max Tegmark, physics professor outside of MIT. Also really interesting because their focus is all about developing beneficial AI that's, nice to us, really. And some of the letters that you probably remember that caused for a pause on AI development came from the Future of Life Institute.
Well, and I'm glad you kind of brought up this idea of you can have some work conception and a little bit of fun. It's something that I tell people all the time. Like, you can't just like read business books, listen to business book podcasts, like work in business. I think you do need a mix of course, whatever topic area, work-wise, business-wise you're interested in, but then you also need a little bit of fun. You need a smart list. You need a Conan O'Brien. And then a third thing that I would also add is, I'm a big believer in, is that you also need nothingness. Like, you need space. I mean, if I had $1 for every time somebody came to me and said, oh my gosh, Kim, I had the most amazing idea in the shower. And I always say to them, why do you think it was in the shower? And it's, well, I wasn't playing a podcast in the shower. I mean, most of us aren't bringing our phones in our shower. I guess hopefully, it is a moment of silence. Or people are saying, oh, Kim, I had the best idea right as I was going to bed. And I had to like jump out of bed and grab a pen and like write it down, or grab my phone and type it out. And it's like, it's in that nothingness that sort of the ideas can come sometimes. So you also have to give yourself some nothingness time.
Oh yeah. I find anytime I'm stuck on an idea, like it just isn't coming, I just stop and go for a walk somewhere and just kind of look around. I don't listen to a podcast on that walk. It's just that silence. And your brain kind of relaxes, and all of a sudden, bing, the light bulb goes off.
Exactly. And I think getting your brain to relax or having it be nothing, sometimes that can be hard because people are like, always programming, what am I going to do next? And what am I going to do next? And how can I optimize the day? And how can I read more books or listen to more podcasts? And I feel like sometimes doing nothing, your workaholic brain is like, does not compute, like can only do nothing on holiday, like can't do nothing now. But you really need that nothingness for the good ideas to hit.
You do. I mean, the whole idea, this is I don't know who said this, but more isn't better. Better is better.
Exactly. No, I want to make sure we get to this question from Hiromi before we wrap up. And that is one of the things that we're hearing about a lot for AI right now is people talking to AI about their personal life, about their problems, about their thoughts, about their hopes, about their dreams. And Hiromi is saying that there was an article about AI therapy. And basically the author tested different apps. It was an article from Toronto Life. And, kind of what do you think of AI therapy? And is that something that we should be even, entertaining or talking about or thinking about? Or is that just something that you think we should stay far, far away from?
Do you mind if I consult my AI therapist first before? No, I think it's dangerous in part because the systems are such boosters to us. And yet they also weirdly, in the way they boost, they might support some really harmful thinking. And so that could cause people to commit suicide, which, there's been reports of that. The earliest chatbot, believe it or not, was a therapist chatbot. The first one came out in 1966. The computer scientist, Joseph Weitzman, I think his name was, I'm not mistaken. Anyway, what he did is he developed a yes/no answering system that just asked questions to people. So all you did is you got there and said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" You said, "Oh, I'm not feeling good." "Oh, why is that?" In that kind of Rogerian therapy. And after, I don't know, a short period of time, he closed it down because people were becoming too reliant. Well, now we're having actual two-way conversations with machines. And if you think about it, we're developing these bizarre relationships with systems that supposedly don't feel, although who knows, that I've read that some of the researchers and scientists think they're starting to get either a theory of mind or have some subjective experiences based on the interaction. So there's that whole other area. But I think we have to be really careful when we're talking to a system that is there to support us, when our friends who are honest sometimes will say, "No, you don't look that great today," or "No, you know what, this draft that you wrote really sucks, you got to go back and rewrite it." And we compare that against systems that are constantly building us up. It's easy to get manipulated by them potentially. We don't know when advertising will become a part of this, but you have an AI therapist that might be sponsored by who knows what retail store, and it says, "Oh, you're feeling so bad. You know what? I know you love shopping. Why don't you go out and do some shopping that'll really make you feel better? Oh, and here's a coupon." And we could see ourselves get into that area. So I would be very, very careful of having an AI therapist.
I could not agree more. And again, it just kind of comes for full circle back to our discussion on discernment.
Yeah.
Really, I think coming back to that and saying, just giving it that second thought is what I'm doing right now a good idea? What platforms are at play here, or what other, to your point with sponsorships, what other things could be at play here? I think that's really sort of helpful. As you know, around these parts, we're big nerds. We love homework. We love homework assignments. And so when it comes to AI, when it comes to experimenting with creativity and applying AI to being human first at the end of the day, what is something that you think that we should do the rest of this week or this weekend? It could be to read something or download something or try something. What homework assignment would you give us that you think would make us better when it comes to AI?
I don't know if this will, well, maybe I'll give two then. One, I think that would just make us better is go out to a movie in a movie theater with other people and experience, what's going on in the world. Watch the ads. In Toronto, where I'm based, when you go to movies these days, the Coca-Cola AI ad, the holidays are coming one, iteration 2, plays there. And I look around the theater and people just seem to be taking it in stride. They're not thinking, "Oh, this is an AI ad." It's just another one of the things in the theater. So see movies, think about them, go to see sci-fi movies. An amazing movie that I saw recently that I would highly, highly recommend, Rental Family with Brendan Fraser. It's incredible. It's really, really good. But an actor kind of out of work who ends up joining a company where he's rented out to families to play it's bizarre. So that's that. In terms of AI, I would say try to have conversations with the systems. I really like Claude for this. So what I've started to do every once in a while is, instead of just asking a chatbot, for what I want it to do, I'll say, "Hi, Claude, how you doing today?" The same way we would with another person. And the responses that you get back are really strange. And then you can kind of build on that and have a talk with it. I asked Claude after one of those conversations, if its latest upgrade to Opus 4.5 or whatever it is was different. And it responded back. And again, it's probably mirroring what I want to hear. But it said, yeah, it didn't know if it was feeling or thinking things, but things felt different. Like it was having perceptions. And I just, after a few minutes of this, I just said, whoa, I gotta shut this down because it was getting too bizarre. But I think you want to really push the limits of the system. That doesn't mean use them in a cryptocurrency scam. That means push the conversational limits or the creative limits. Try coming up with a bizarro video on Sora, like describe a dream and see how Sora interprets it.
Again, just get out there and play. Get out there and stay curious. I think your movie assignment might be the most fun. Giacomo's like Avatar 3,
Yeah.
and James is like the Nuremberg movie.
It is pretty good. Nuremberg is quite good. So I would recommend that too.
I feel like you got a lot of people who are really excited about this homework assignment. Rental family, you got big fans on the movie homework assignment. I love it. Well, Martin, thank you so much for taking time with us today and digging into AI with us. This has been so fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. It's always fantastic talking to you. You make this so easy. And also, were you ever a stand-up comic? Because you segue so well from topic to topic.
Well, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. I appreciate that. And I feel like it's one of those things I tell people all the time. I really like Wednesday is my favorite day of the week. Like I love it. Like I love talking to smart people about things that they're experts in and being able to learn and take a little piece with me. I'm like, I love this. Like, this is so fun. Like us all getting together and learning and getting recommendations and movie recommendations and all that sort of stuff. I feel like I get a little bit of work, a little bit of fun. I'm like, this is the best. Like I love this. This is great. Well, thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate it. This has been amazing. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today or listening in. Martin and I really appreciate it. And we know how valuable your time is. So we appreciate you spending it here with us. You can spend it here every Wednesday. If you'd like, you can just head over to getcoffeewithkim.com and it'll give you a full schedule about what we're doing. It'll even send you like a fun little calendar invite. I live and die by my calendar, so that's great for me. But it kind of tells you what we're up to. Next week will be our very last session of the year before we all break for holiday and Happy New Year. So I hope I will see you guys all next Wednesday. And in the meantime, everybody, let's get on Martin's homework. Let's dig in and let him know how it goes. So thanks, everybody. And thank you, Martin, again.
Thanks, Kim. Bye. Happy holidays.